Good day, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. And thank you in particular to Brennan and Craig for joining us on this Insider Live session. We're going to be talking all about Microsoft Places for the next 45 minutes. Got a bit of a structure here, but I suspect that it won't be entirely a straight line, but that's fine. So please, as Tom said, use the chat, ask questions. We've got a friend of mine, friend of the show, Rob, in the chat who's going to do Q&A, but we might cover some of them ourselves. Quick round of intros. I'm Chris Fitzsimmons. I'm an MVP. I'm also a senior solutions architect at AVI-SPL with a particular for all things workplace experience, Microsoft Places being one of those. I'm joined by hopefully a man who needs not too much introduction to this community, Brennan McReynolds. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Chris. I failed to mention that you are one of the first MVPs with true expertise in Places. So very grateful of your investment in Places. For those that haven't met or virtually we have connected, I'm Brennan. I lead product for Microsoft Places. Spent the last decade focused purely committed to understanding, elevating workplace experience and how we can also optimize the services and the spaces across your organization. So excited to be here. Appreciative Tom, Chris, and Craig, most importantly, for lending his perspective and his kind of learned experiences with Places to this broader audience.
Yeah, so Craig, maybe give us a quick intro as well. Explain what you're doing here.
Hello all, Craig McClellan. I'm an infrastructure manager at Sutter Health, leading our Microsoft 365 and cloud infrastructure engineering teams. We had the pleasure of engaging with Chris very early on in our evaluation of Places to replace our existing workplace reservation system. His team provided some very knowledgeable insight and experience to help us be successful with an initial pilot rollout and ultimately a full production rollout to our admin hub site locations as part of a return to office initiative that we had. My team led the deployment of Places, and we've come a long way and partnered very closely with Chris and Brennan and the Microsoft team to continue to evolve the product and provide the best possible experience to our end users.
Thank you, Craig. Craig's going to give us the real experience here. Brennan and I will talk about the story and the goal, and hopefully Craig can chime in with his lived experience of the things we're going to talk about here. I think best place to start probably is a bit of an introduction to Places itself. So Brennan, why don't you give us the elevator pitch? What is Microsoft Places? And probably just as importantly, what it is not.
Yeah, man, I think if you go back almost 3.5, 4 years ago, we announced Places. The intent remains the same. The hybrid work has changed the way we think about when we go into the office, the reasons we go in, where we go in, and Places continues to evolve and support and enable. This is the way we work. Modern work today is about choice. It's about flexibility. It's empowering people to be with one another, to create connection and collaboration. And most importantly, Places is an acknowledgement or recognition by Microsoft that say, like, your physical office, the real estate footprint, our offices matter. They have a formal home across M365 within the Places directory. And as those buildings and your workplaces get added into M365, that creates new value and new experiences that didn't exist a few years ago. So at the end of the day, we want users just to use Microsoft as they normally do. Microsoft Calendar, importantly, I think for many of you who don't know all of the Places story, we exist in a larger organization across Microsoft named Time and Place, which is inclusive of Microsoft Calendar. So you really think about meeting the user where they are, enabling these planning moments throughout the day of who am I meeting with or what does my day look like? That context of location is key to enabling the modern workplace and our just modern work in general. So Places is here to support that. Naturally, it includes a lot of reservation capabilities because that has existed in Exchange for years, and all we're doing is augmenting those existing behaviors within Exchange with additional spatial context that Places enables. And Craig can talk about their use cases and their scenarios, but ultimately, it's really about enabling the modern work experience with flexible solutions and optionality while meeting the users where they are in the natural flow of work. So I'll pause there. We'll get into a little bit more use cases, scenarios, value props, but I think flexibility is going to be the key theme or thread that we pull in today's discussion.
Perfect. Thanks, Brennan. Yeah, I think one of the most exciting things that's evolved along with Places is the Copilot story, right? So Copilot was nascent, shall we say, when I first became engaged with Places, and the real kind of convergence of these two pieces of work is very interesting. And I think a lot of the benefit that users can experience in Places is not tied to Copilot, but it's definitely elevated by it, right? Mm-hmm. we talk about making plans and booking rooms, and then guess what? Stuff changes, right? And the plan changes, and people's work strategy changes, and their day in the office changes. And well, I'm going to show some of that here in a minute, but maybe just give us a couple of minutes on, how Copilot and the AI feature stack can enhance what Places is doing already.
I think it's important I joined Microsoft 3 months before Copilot was announced. So to think about Places as this new tool to enable the modern workplace experience and the way we associate with one another in space, and then now provide this value on top of that through Copilot and AI and agents. The ways we work in the future are fundamentally going to continue to evolve and change. The type of work that we do physically in person, why we come together, is going to continue to evolve. So the role of place to bring us together, to how we meet, to how we share knowledge across our respective agents, is all going to continue to evolve and shift. The thing that we care the most about in many ways is physical presence, as defined by a user voluntarily or sharing that they've chosen to be in the office today. And there's this concept in my mind or saying from back playing like Little League growing up, and in the Midwest, as you play your baseball game, and then you'd go buy like raffle tickets and stuff. And on the back of those raffle tickets, there was always this saying, "This must be present to win," meaning if you bought the raffle ticket and they were going to call out your number, you're going to win the jackpot of $100 or whatever it was. But on the back was like, if you weren't physically there to claim your prize, then you don't get to win. And I think about that saying a lot when it comes to modern work. And whether we're in a virtual meeting or a hybrid meeting or in person, physical presence and being present with one another is what's most important. It's why we come together. And our job is to help facilitate the way that we think about connecting in person and optimizing our time together within the workplace. So Copilot's helping us do that. And we'll show some examples today. Our monthly demo day, we'll show some examples, but really taking that value, we call it workplace intelligence, which is that context of understanding both the physical buildings, floors, rooms, desks that exist across your real estate portfolio and confirmed presence that somebody has chosen to share. You put those two together, let Copilot consume that. We can create more intuitive experiences around how we schedule time together, asking Copilot to kind of restack my meetings, to optimize my day in the office, are just a few examples of where we're taking the product. So,
Craig, you guys have been on this journey now for 8 months, 6 to 8 months, and now you're into a semi-deployed state, right? You continue to roll out and continue to expand, but what is the most striking impact that you feel like your users have experienced? This is, a lot of people come at this with a back-end problem they want to solve, or an analytics question, or a whatever. That's fine. But what about the user experience? Because as Brennan said, you got to be present to play, and we need users to adopt, embrace, plan, and use the tool. How has that gone, and what's the biggest learning that you've had or feedback that you've had from your users?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of hit it on 2 points. So I want to connect to the Copilot part there as well. It was funny. We brought it in, and the Copilot experience in Places has continued to evolve as Copilot has evolved and Places has evolved. But one of the things we hear a lot of feedback on is one of the functions of the automatic schedule adjustment. And that was a big piece that our leaders really enjoyed, was the automatic rebooking functionality. So it's funny. It seems like such a simple thing, but it also provides so much assistance and accommodation functionality there that the end users don't have to worry about it anymore when you're licensed with Copilot. So that's one that I've actually heard through our leadership channels as well, as people really, really liked that. I think the biggest one kind of even goes back to what Brennan talked about meeting people where they were. And that was the big motivation for us to move to Places. Was we had an external system for doing desk and office reservations outside of what people used for room reservations within the Outlook and the calendar experience. And so by bringing those two worlds together, it really provided a seamless experience for our end users to be in a single platform, whether it be for rooms, offices, or desks, to be able to plan that and interface in that single pane of glass. So for us, I think that was the big motivating factor to look at Places. And the biggest success, I feel like, again, from our end users, is they don't have to worry about now going to another platform and figuring out how to make a reservation there. They see it all on their Outlook calendar. They can manage it all from their Outlook calendar or their team's calendar, right? And again, it's that unified user experience.
Hey, Brennan, I'm going to take one out of the chat here, if that's okay. Jonathan's asking about the logic behind the rebooking. Is that something you can speak to in terms of what Copilot chooses, or would you prefer to take that one offline and respond asynchronously?
Yeah, I would just say that I want to acknowledge the past behaviors that sometimes you're like, why did I get this room? Or should I really be getting this room? So we have gotten a lot of feedback on those recommendations, and there are continuing to be improvements. In fact, a few that are rolling out, I think, in the next month on just the types of recommendations that get made based off of additional variables present through both Exchange and policies, but also what's in the Places directory. So I would just say, historically, the suggestions that we've made when recommending a room has been based off of heuristics and how and where you've naturally booked. Copilot will continue to improve upon those. And we're doing some really interesting studies right now on the types of data that makes those recommendations better to improve those suggestions long term.
I tell you what I'm going to do now. We'll do a quick demo and talk along. Because one of the goals here is to give people that haven't really seen much of Places an overview. And I think one of the most important user steps is the work plan, right? The analogy I always give to people is if you want to make the most of Places, it's a social contract, right? You have to put information in, you have to put your plan in, then other people can benefit from you setting your plan. And what I'm going to do, just show a couple of bits and pieces. And Craig, maybe what I'm going to do while I'm doing this is have you explain or comment on how well you feel like you guys have done in getting these behaviors adopted, and anything people may be able to learn from in terms of, hey, this worked well to encourage people, or this has been a benefit of this. So what I'm showing here is the work hours and location setting, which is not new to Outlook, right, or to Teams, but it allows you as a user to say, this is my general plan for working. Where am I going to work? When am I going to work? Here in my demo tenant, I'm working Monday to Thursday in the office, and I'm remote on Friday, right? And I could change the building. I could search for a building and add it. I could split my day up if I really wanted to and say I'm going home on, Wednesday afternoons or something like that. And just say so I can say this is 1 or 12, and I'm going to come in at 1 and go home and be available in the afternoon, right? So that's that. The other thing that's really important about this is the sharing element, right? So this is me telling the system, Places, what I'm intending to do, but then this information down here about what I'm going to tell other people, right? So what can my colleagues see? If I do this, no one can see anything, but may be important for particular roles or job positions that need to hide that kind of information, or maybe like an auditor or something. But in general, I want to share where I'm sitting, which building I'm going to be in, which desk I've booked, and that is what will then allow other people to make smart decisions based on what I'm planning to do. The other thing up here is obviously to share your work location on your calendar. That allows other people to see that, and if someone has delegated access to your calendar, they can also obviously see that too. And we talk a little bit more about delegation later on, maybe. So once I've done this, yeah,
Chris, I think this was like the big part that, as part of your end user training component, like this needs to be step number 1, because what people try to do is they try to go jump right into calendar and to try to book a desk and do that functionality, and that is kind of dependent on this. And you're going to probably show that here in a minute, but this is an important first step that a lot of people miss, and they're like, hey, I'm not able to see how I can book a desk. It doesn't show up in my calendar, right? Or the right location isn't showing up. So like this was an important first step to make sure that people do from a training perspective is like, and then on the sharing your location part, again, you're going to find mixed results about people's willingness to do that. I think the thing that we continue to try to iterate, and I know Microsoft does as well, is like, we're not tracking your personal phone, right? You're not being tracked from a GPS perspective. You're really just helping provide insight so that as part of an in-person collaboration experience, you can really work to sit next to people that you do associate with and coordinate with throughout the day. And if you don't do the sharing of your location, you're going to miss out on a big part of that collaboration experience and that planning of your hybrid work schedule. So I'll leave it there. Obviously, if people have different feelings on that.
And I think the other thing to reiterate is that this is a personal choice, right? There's no way to force this setting. There's no way to administratively come in and set everyone to share everything. This is a user-based decision based on, your confidence and comfort or whatever. But I think the message is the more you share, the more everyone gets out of it, the more useful the tool becomes. So let's kind of show where some of the places that shows up, right? So here's my work plan. Here's my demo environments. Very busy week here. I didn't get a time to build a bunch of meetings in, but let's look at tomorrow, right? So let's look at Wednesday. I'm planning to be in the office. I've got some meeting rooms booked. I can go in here and it'll see who else is planning to be in the office, right? So somebody else's work plan says they also plan to be in London. That's my test, Chris, there. You can see I've got some meetings. They don't have rooms booked for them. If I wanted to, this was the first thing that hilariously blew my mind with Places, was I could just book rooms for 3 meetings in one go. And if you do nothing else, this is really good. Here's my 3 meetings. It's making suggestions for each meeting based on room availability and size or whatever. And I can flip through and choose different ones if I want to. And I can hit select and I can book 3 meeting rooms. Bang, done. All right, that was easy. I need a desk. Currently don't have a desk. It's actually giving me some suggestions up here, right? I always demonstrate this using this tenant, and I always book desk 2.1. Copilot is suggesting helpfully that I should book 2.1, and you can tell it's a Copilot driven suggestion because it's got the little sparkly here on the desk. But if I don't want to take the suggestion, I can go over here, and now I've got my floor plan, right? So I can go browse around the floor, and this is where what we were just talking about surfaces, right? So this shared information is going to be manifested by, icons and little smiley faces. There's my friend Rob here, who's got a assigned desk there. So now I can make choices. Do I want to sit next to Rob? I can click there. But if he hasn't shared that information, I don't get to make that kind of affirmative choice about wanting to sit next to Rob. And so this starts to become less friendly, less useful. And you can see here, up top left, we've got suggestions. So this one's the one I always book. This one's based on collaborators. So this is, again, Copilot leveraging graph and understanding who I frequently meet with, who I frequently chat with, email or whatever, and it's given me a couple of suggestions, or I can just come down here and make choices. And there are I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you can assign characteristics to desks, you can assign metadata to desks in the setup process, and then in here I can make choices about what kind of characteristics I want. Do I want a sit-stand desk? Do I want a wheelchair accessible desk? And it'll start filtering down my options, right? Hit reserve, bang, it's confirming it. I'm going to get an email, done. All right, so that's a super simple workflow. And now you can see my desk reservations pending, filter on. You wouldn't normally see that on the calendar, right? So this is a usability thing. You can choose to show your reservation, but it kind of makes things a little messy. So by default, that's off. That's just a thing. And that allows you to edit your desk in here if you want to cancel a reservation or edit. But if we want to do that, we can also go into the Places app, right? So this is the other user experience that people need to kind of get their hands around, which is, yes, I can do 99% of it out of my calendar. And by the way, it's the same in Outlook as in Teams, new Outlook or new Teams calendar. So this, you can do nearly everything you want to do in Places in here, right? You don't need to go learn a new app. Just point out here also that Rob is showing in the building, and it's offering me the option to check in the building, all in familiar applications. One of the first interactions, actually it might have been with Craig's team, was doing train the trainer with some of the other parts of the business. And the first thing you say to them is, this isn't another app. You don't have to learn a new thing, right? And they all wave their hands in the air and get excited that we're not showing them a new application that they have to get onboarded with. It's just in Teams and Outlook. So the last thing here is the Places app, right? So this is the kind of the homepage for the building we're in. We're in London. I've got immediate access to find a desk or a room. I got information about who's coming in. Rob's in. My test user is planning to be in, and I can actually provide outward links here to applications. I can link a native Teams app here. So if I've got like a catering integration or something else, I can do that, or I can go out to like local traffic news or whatever.
We really like that services and amenities functionality, and we did a lot of stuff about the building information, right? We linked it to a Google Maps page. We provided information for like parking instructions. We did a lot of things like nearby buildings. Under that service and amenity, we took a lot of our legacy data that we had in a SharePoint site with information about our admin hub locations, and then we built these services and amenities around it to provide kind of that seamless experience of like what people were used to seeing and the information they were used to seeing, and they can still see that now in Places to give them the same details.
Yeah, great. Brennan, anything you want to add? Did I speed through anything that you would like me to kind of take a U-turn on and double back on from a user experience perspective? I think the people tab probably we need to spend a little bit of time on, actually. So this is the other element of that social contract, right? You can get a view of various different views of the humans that you work with, right? Places isn't just about location, it's about interaction with your colleagues and your peers. So we come over here. Now I can see a list of people that Places knows that I commonly interact with and their work plan. So I can see, my friend Adam, who's actually based out of our Chicago office. I can see what he's planning to do. I can see that Rob is occasionally in Toronto, sometimes in London. We've got Kevin down here. So I can actually then, maybe as a manager or as a team leader, see, okay, here's what everyone's doing. And this list of people is now dynamically generated. I think you can get up to 40 people in this list. And you can do things like filter just by London or whatever to get a snapshot of what your friends are up to. And you can scroll through, right? So I can go look at next week, or I can go look at, maybe I'm visiting Toronto in May and I want to see what's going on. I can do that as well. So there's a kind of a real planning element to this. And then again, for any of those days, I can come in here, I can book a desk, I can book rooms for meetings if I don't have them. It's just another way to get at the stuff, depending on how you want it. If you're a Places power user, I think you might spend more time in here. If you are literally just wanting a desk and a room, maybe you live in Teams and it does 99% of what you want.
Yeah, I'll jump back to your point, Chris, about we're not forcing people into a new application, right? I think that was the important distinction. And I think it was a great foresight on the Microsoft team to say, hey, we are building this new Places app to give you a different way to look at it as well. But we're also bringing it directly into the calendar function, which is what everyone is used to for booking conference rooms and meeting rooms, right? So from what I said in the beginning, we had people in 2 different reservation systems. We're now still back in 1 reservation system for rooms and desks/offices is how we use it. And so you're not forcing them to a new platform necessarily. You're integrating the platforms, which I think was a huge benefit.
Craig, could you share a little bit about, are you all on New Outlook? Are you in Classic? How are you using the Places app? Just kind of help everybody orientate to how you're leveraging the product today.
We had actually did a fairly large push to New Outlook. We aren't forcing people or preventing people to roll back. We're strongly encouraging people to be in New Outlook because of things like this, right? Places coming out, obviously Places is in Classic Outlook and available there as well, but new functionality and new features and the user experience is just better in New Outlook. And then when you add in the Copilot experience as well, we know that those functionalities and features for Copilot are rolling out to New Outlook first. So we're at about a 60-40 split right now across our organization, where we have about 60% of our users on New Outlook, 40% maybe use Classic still or switch back to Classic. We know that there are some workflows that users have that just aren't there in New Outlook yet. And so again, we didn't want to prevent people. I think obviously Microsoft has acknowledged that as well, and they've pushed that timetable out a little bit for when they were going to be forcing people to not be able to roll back. I would say the majority of our users are using it in Outlook, the new calendar experience. I think it really just depends on what your end user experience is used to doing. I think that was one of the questions we had going into Places with New Outlook being kind of on the road there as well, was like, do we try to force people to adopt a new platform for making reservations for rooms and desks, i.e. the new Teams calendar experience, and leave people alone with Classic Outlook? Or do we try to push people to New Outlook and then let them work in there, which is what they're used to doing for room reservations? And I think that's what made more sense for us, is we're like, we don't want to force people to a new platform just because we're rolling out this new experience for desks. They're already in Outlook. They're already used to using Outlook Calendar. Let's just give them the best possible experience and encourage them. And so that was why we decided to move forward with the New Outlook.
We had 2 schools on that. There's the old school, which is we're making a change. Let's make it as good as we can. And then the other school is we don't want to make too many changes at once. So we're going to kind of stick. I think maybe, Brennan, it would be good to get more definitive answer maybe on what is available in Classic versus New Outlook, and is what changes are mooted in that perspective.
Yeah. What's available now would be the Places Finder picture-based modern room booking experience. So that is,
okay, which I shall demonstrate right now
for everybody everywhere. And that, effective tomorrow, everybody could go turn that on, right? That's been premium up until today. So farewell, gating that behind as a premium experience. That Places Finder becomes available in Classic. Now, what's not available in Classic today is that I need to book a reserve a desk experience. And I think that's something, and the reason of the Places app is to serve and accommodate Classic Outlook users with a more modern service to allow for map-based experiences. As we've announced on our roadmap, bringing map-based experiences into the modern calendar to convert into the modern calendar experiences is the minimum. I distinguish that because you can have that in Teams, but ultimately we also acknowledge that some customers will be legacy within Classic Outlook, and we are exploring other functionality that we could maybe bring into Classic in the meantime as a stopgap until all customers migrate over to New Outlook.
I think that's a fair answer. This is one of my favorite things about Places is that it's evolving, right? It's not done, and that's fine, right? Not that it's unfinished, it's just continuing to grow. We're continuing to get goodness, new partners, new API capability, new features, revisions to user experience based on experience, right? And contact with the real world. I think that's all very positive here.
Chris, maybe just to your comment there, the evolution of the product is, we're fortunate to have great customers like Craig and partners like you all, the folks that are on this call, our office hours forum, a ton of feedback, a ton of requirements. And so we continue to say, look, what's the natural evolution of the product? That's a part of the natural home for these Microsoft experiences. We're not trying to build, and it's important to spend time on like what isn't Places, just to make sure we're really clear. We're not trying to do to everything here. This is not a robust workplace management platform, but we are trying to leverage the existing reservation mechanism from Exchange to just, as Craig said, meet the user where they are in the natural flow of work to do some of these things that help drive and create a more modern workplace experience. Albie in the chat has this question about like, what doesn't it do? And I think this is like one of the great dividing lines of saying service requests on top of a reservation, catering, room configuration, setup, all these kind of workplace related workflows is not something as a part of our core reservation experience. There's a ton of great partners who can facilitate those experiences. We're continuing to look at and find ways to work with them more interchangeably as in order to just streamline what effectively is just one big workflow where here's a meeting workflow that gets initiated that needs to be fulfilled. And how can we leverage in the future Copilot and agents to support that singular workflow to where it's not as bifurcated as maybe it is today. So managed spaces is not our bag. Like that's not our wheelhouse. I think if managed means I need to have a service added to an existing reservation is just one area that we're not playing in.
And I'll piggyback on what Brennan mentioned about the office hours. That was something that we heard about as we started to look at the product. And I think we were probably joining those calls for a good 3 months before we even rolled out our pilot. And so if anyone here is considering looking at it or rolling it out or presenting it to your leadership team or are in the process of doing it, I would highly, highly recommend joining that weekly office hours call. You're going to gain a lot of insight, a lot of experience, and you're going to hear about the challenges that people that do have it in production run into, and then the way that they're able to accomplish various workarounds. And there's a lot of good functionality that exists within the Exchange ecosystem that kind of builds into Places that maybe you didn't think about how those two are connected to solve a potential problem that you might have from a reservation perspective. And you also are going to hear a lot of insight about what people are asking for. So again, I'll be asked that question in the chat there, like what are some features that people are asking for? You're going to hear a lot of that from a lot of different orgs. And a lot of it's going to be specific on their use case, right? You've got people who are doing a hybrid workplace experience, they're leaving it to the end user, right? That's one particular workflow. And there's going to be challenges associated with that. You've got other orgs like ours, where it's a requirement from an HR perspective that people have a classification of on-site, remote, or hybrid. And as being part of hybrid, you have to actually be in the office a certain amount of days every month. And there's going to be different challenges that we have than another organization that leaves it to the end user to decide when they're coming in. So you're going to gain a lot of valuable insight on how people are approaching that just based off of their specific business use case.
Yeah, I think an Albie is in the position of being about 6 months back in time from you, right, Craig? He's beginning, we're just helping them with a POC right now. They're just deploying, so they're kind of figuring out what's what. And he's been tracking the product with us for a while, so it's valuable to hear your perspective. I'm conscious of time, right? We have 9 minutes. I'm not going to demo anymore because I want to keep this conversation going, and I feel like Clicky is not necessarily a good use of this time. So let's talk briefly about how to get it, how to set it up, how to start. We've kind of hinted at this licensing change. I don't think I want this to devolve into a dramatic explanation of that. But Brennan, as of April the 1st, what are the licensing requirements to Places? What will those licenses get you?
Yeah. As of tomorrow, if you have E3, E5, user's license for Exchange or Calendar, Places Finder, so modern room booking experiences, the Places app, the view that Chris had showed earlier, all of the room booking, which has always been included, but just the more modern services, map-based experiences are all included in that kind of, let's just call it core business licensing. The experiences that will be licensed under this shared space or team shared space license, which is effectively just a team shared device license renamed, will be if you need to have a desk booked in advance, you want to have analytics on a room or a desk, or you need a room to have an auto release, are the spaces moving from user to space, the spaces that will need to have the shared space license. And that shared space license is $8 like TSD was. You get 4 spaces. So think about $2 a space, a room or a desk is the way that this works. It should be relatively straightforward once we get over this like kind of conversion 8 to 4 thing that hopefully will clear the air and help people move more quickly
And just to circle back quickly on what something Brennan said there, if you have a room with a Teams Room system and a Teams Rooms Pro license inside it, you do not also need to get a shared space license, right? So all of the Places goodies come pre-booked, pre-canned in your Teams Rooms Pro license. It's just for desks and rooms without Teams Room systems, maybe they're BYOD rooms, whatever. They would need some kind of licensing to get you analytics, and for desks specifically, the individual desk booking.
I would also add the auto release, right? The auto release.
Yeah, auto release is a
for
big
a
one.
room.
Good call.
That's the other part for a room that you would want or need.
Yeah, that's a great call out. So I think for people that are considering Places or just beginning their Places journey, maybe we'll talk from a technical administrative perspective. So Craig, who needs to be involved early in your business? Who did you invite? Who did you not invite that maybe you should have invited or I should have invited? What's the village of humans that you feel like would be the ideal to compile to start the Places discussion?
Yeah, so for our organization, it was really two key teams. Well, I guess I should say three, two technical kind of related and one not. My team supports the Exchange environment already. So, we had all the knowledge and the information. We were the ones that built out, obviously, the Places platform, the Places directory, right? So the creation of all the desks and offices, and then also the importing of all of our room finder rooms. And I think that's a big thing to maybe not focus on here, but just make sure people understand is your collection of rooms as it relates to Room Finder and your collection of rooms as it relates to Places Finder are separate. And there needs to be a synchronization of those if you're going to be in a hybrid stance. If you're going to go all in right away, there's a process of standing up Places where you do an export of all your Room Finder rooms, and then you're able to import those into the Places directory. It was on my Exchange team, obviously, from that perspective, because they had the familiarity of the buildings and the rooms, and then obviously the ability to build out all the desk objects that we needed to build out. And then our facilities team is actively involved in managing what we call our admin hub locations, which are the buildings that people are doing either an on-site or a hybrid work experience in. And they actually do a lot of the desk assignments, right? So they manage and have a database of who's assigned to what desk and what office, what teams were already on site, what teams are planning to come back on site. They're obviously helping with the space utilization component. And then they actually own the ongoing desk assignments and office assignments through our platform. So they're in the Places admin console, and they're actively going in and adding people and assigning people to desks, and even working with our desk side services team when there's maybe something wrong at a desk or an office to go in and put a desk or office into maintenance mode. So like from an operational perspective, my team helped build it, but operationally, our facilities team is actually using it as a platform for them as well. So those are the kind of the two teams from an operational technical perspective. I think the third one obviously is a big one, which is your OCM, right? Your communications, your change management, the broadcasting of what's going to be happening, what's going to be changing, having a really robust end user training experience associated with that, a really good repository of knowledge articles and recordings of those webinars maybe that you did. I think those are kind of the three key teams that you would need to involve in any sort of rollout. The last one I think is maybe kind of expected, which is leadership support, right? So having your leadership be involved, I think that was a big win for us as well, as we had a lot of excitement from our senior leadership about it and about getting out of our legacy resource reservation system. And again, back to unifying that user experience into Outlook, right? So that was a passion for our senior leadership, which ultimately made the adoption of it a lot easier.
Yeah, perfect. We are 3 minutes from time. Brennan, any closing remarks or thoughts? Who has a question, wants to throw it in the chat?
If we give Craig something, I would give a few minutes or seconds to talk about Peripheral check-in, because I think there's a unique value proposition that Microsoft brings to this experience of checking into a desk, but obviously comes with some overhead tax and getting it configured. So Craig, maybe give us a few minutes on that would be helpful.
Yeah, so I think Peripheral check-in is one of the most important features to configure for anyone who's deploying it, because it really simplifies the user experience and takes a lot of the thinking out of it. So by configuring your peripherals through the Teams admin platform, you're associating an Exchange resource object to an actual desk. And so then as a user makes a reservation, or even if they use a drop-in functionality where they're not doing an advanced reservation, by plugging into that peripheral, you're automatically checking into the building and to that object, that desk or that office. And so it just takes a lot of the thinking out of it from an end user perspective, And Microsoft has made a lot of progress on that user experience. I think one of the challenges we had early on was kind of like this concept of like, I made a reservation from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., but I get at the office 15 minutes early or 30 minutes early to get my coffee and get set up. There were some initial challenges there with the association of an early plugin and a check-in. And Microsoft has done a lot of work recently to make that experience more transparent to the end user and to associate an early plugin for a next, half-hour reservation and kind of connect those two together. I would say for anyone who's really considering looking at this, make sure you look at the Peripheral auto detection, the Peripheral check-in functionality, because it really makes that user experience just seamless and I'd say dumb, right? You don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, I think it's a great call out, and a really like a good example of a feature that was a great idea and has now fully developed and evolved into a really good implementation, which, as Craig said, like makes stuff easier for users and requires them to do less work, which, ultimately is a win. I think, as Tom alluded to, we're going to need a part 2 and maybe a part 3 in shocking news. We can talk about Places all day. Brennan, thank you ever so much for taking time out and joining us, and to you and the rest of the team for taking the time to engage with the community in the various ways that you do. The office hours sessions are great. The roadmap session is also very valuable. I know Craig and I both appreciate those and look forward to them. Again, thank you very much for joining us pretty early in your day and taking part. We are very grateful. Thank you all for your questions and engagement in the chat, and Rob for running the chat, and Tom for having this idea and hosting us all and making it possible. So hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everybody.